Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm James and you're watching Wonderful World. And I have a lot of practice handling and socializing snakes. But the more I learn, the more I find that I have more to learn and room to grow as a reptile keeper. And today's video is about something that I don't have as much experience with, but something that I would like to learn more about. But it's also something that I'm still kind of up in the air about. And so today we're going to talk about choice-based reptile handling. And we're also going to give my ball python Jerry his first ever free roaming time. One of the more recent trends in reptile husbandry is choice-based reptile handling. And basically what that is opening the door of the enclosure and letting your reptile decide for itself if it wants to come out and explore, and decide for itself if it wants to come out and be handled. And the idea behind that is that is less stressful for your snake than just you going in and picking it up and taking it out of its enclosure. I like the idea of that, but I've also heard people talk about choice-based handling and use terms like forced handling and fear-free interactions, and I really don't agree with that. I've heard people insinuate that anything other than 100% choice-based handling is just instilling fear and mistrust in your snakes. And it is completely reasonable if you do it the right way, if you move the right way and you're gentle, to teach your reptiles to trust you and be able to interact with them without causing any fear or stress to that reptile. Picking up your snake and taking it out of the enclosure does not make you a bad parent. In fact, it's quite the opposite of that. Your snakes need to get used to handling and interacting with you, and the better job you do at socializing your snakes, the less stressful it's going to be for them in terms of interacting with you. After all, I don't ask my dogs permission when I put on their leashes to take them out for a walk, and they still love me and love their walks. And I know that's not the best comparison because dogs are very different animals from a snake. And I don't want to be closed-minded or misunderstand what choice-based handling is and what it aims to accomplish. Like I said, I like the idea of it. My leopard gecko Laverne was probably the first one that got me thinking about choice-based handling. Because Laverne always steps up into my hand, I never have to pick her up and take her out of her enclosure. Anymore, it is always Laverne's choice whether or not she wants to come out of her enclosure and be handled. Now, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how the choice-based handling really works. Obviously, for some reptiles, it would not work at all. The last thing I would want to do would be to open the door to my enclosure for my giant day gecko Carl, because if I left the door open and he got out, he would be climbing the walls and the ceilings, and I would have a very hard time getting him back in his enclosure. And even with some very well socialized snakes like Pumpkin here, Pumpkin is a very calm and chill snake. At the same time, I know how fast a corn snake can move. And although she's very calm here in my hands, I know that once I put her down on the ground and she's not in my hands, there's no telling how fast she could move, where she would end up in this room. There's a lot of furniture in here that the enclosures are on, where she could go somewhere that I just can't get to. And the same thing with my garter snakes. My garter snakes are very chill snakes for handling, but they are also very fast and very spastic. And the second I don't have them in my hands, they would be all over the place. So along the same lines as the choice-based handling, I'm very overprotective with my reptiles, and probably sometimes too overprotective. So I've never really given any of them any kind of free roaming time. And if I have one reptile that is probably the best candidate to give some free roaming time to, it would be my ball python Jerry. So I thought, why not? Let's just try to give Jerry some free roaming time in my living room. So first of all, this was Jerry's first time to ever roam free in the house without being in my hands. But this was not so much an exercise in choice-based anything. I went and got Jerry out of his enclosure and put him down on the carpet. He's never really felt carpet before, and he's never really been left to be free in such a wide open space before. And I really wasn't sure what to expect as far as how he would react to it. And I was a little bit surprised. I expected him to be a little rowdy and want to explore all over the house. But instead, he just sat there for quite a while and didn't want to move at all, like he really didn't know what to make of the whole experience. But he didn't seem scared or stressed. And after a while, his curiosity finally got to him, and he started to crawl across the room over to the mantel. So after a while, Jerry decided that he had enough exploring, and he crawled back over to me and came up into my lap. And I used my hand to help support his body, and he eventually came down off my lap, but wanted to stay right by me and be touching me. And it did seem that he felt the most safe and secure when he was on or with me. But that's what Jerry knows and what he's used to. So perhaps if I gave him some more free time, he might get more used to it and venture out a little bit more, and that will be interesting to see. So this was an interesting, if not enriching, experience for both Jerry and myself, and I'm hopeful that in the future I can find ways of giving him more and more enrichment like this. Plus, one of these days, I plan on adding a boa constrictor to my family, and that would be exactly the kind of snake that could benefit from some choice-based training. So even though I'm not completely convinced about it yet, I'll definitely be thinking more about this in the future and seeing how I might be able to implement more choice-based training for some of my other reptiles. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope it gave you something to think about. If it did, please consider subscribing to the channel. And until the next video, I look forward to seeing you again real soon.